What's good, YouTube? CuddleofDeath here, yay, hurry happy day, woo! With so many Pokemon in existence so far, there is bound to be some extremely weird things floating around in the Pokemon world. In Generation 2 games, breeding was introduced for the very first time. This was a fun and exciting concept that allowed players to put two compatible Pokemon together to produce an egg, which would later hatch into one of the two Pokemon. What made things interesting, however, was the different divisions of the egg groups, which has totally expanded over the years. Between all of the different egg groups, there has been some extremely odd breeding pair combinations. I am here today with my friend Tamashii to bring you guys the top 10 weirdest breeding pairs. Her channel will be linked in the description, so make sure to go check her out. Also, we did a video over on her channel discussing the top 10 NPCs in the Pokemon games. Now, I hope you are all excited as we get on with the show. Number 10, Zangoose and Seviper. Nothing is more thrilling than getting comfortable with your enemy, and I mean really comfortable. This is the case with both Zangoose and Seviper. For those who are unaware, Zangoose is designed after a mongoose, which is a rodent that has been known to feast on snakes as well as snake eggs. Seviper, on the other hand, is a venomous viper Pokemon. Quick fun fact about the mongoose, it has extremely thick fur and has been said to be quite immune to snake venom. Both Zangoose and Seviper are in the egg group known as the field group, which features the most variety of Pokemon out of any other egg group. The fact that these two Pokemon can breed together is actually quite hilarious. Honestly, breeding anything with the Zangoose seems quite oxymoronic since it likes to eat eggs. But, you know, I guess this is just a rare case when mortal enemies put aside their differences or, well, love out their differences.
Number 9. Mr. Mime and Lopunny. This one isn't that weird to most people, but I find it funny that my personal least favorite Pokemon, Lopunny, is in the same egg group as one of my all-time favorites, Mr. Mime. I often find humanoid Pokemon unappealing as a rule. I guess I'm just not much of a people person. But I guess it just goes to show that taste is flexible if both my favorite and least favorite Pokemon are classified in the human-like egg category. Actually, Jinx, my second least favorite, is in this category too. Go figure. So really, I should just put myself at the number 9 spot, because I'm the weird one, not the Pokemon.
Number 8, Stunfisk and Gardevoir. You know, usually they say it's an amazing experience when the sparks fly, but is that really the case here? The fact that Stunfisk and Gardevoir can breed is a complete and utter shocker to me. When you take what is arguably the most Rule 34'd Pokemon and pair it with an electric pancake of a fish, you've got yourself a rather interesting breeding pair. Also, listen to Stunfisk's Pokedex entry from Pokemon Black. Its skin is very hard, so it is unhurt even if stepped on by sumo wrestlers. It smiles when transmitting electricity. So, in order for Stunfisk to not shock Gardevoir into fainting, it would need to keep a straight face or frown the entire time these two get down to business. That, to me, is even more hilarious and weird than this breeding pair itself.
Number 7. Trubbish and Vanillude. When it comes to weird Pokemon, a lot of people have problems with Pokemon based off inanimate objects, and no two Pokemon cause as much of a stir as the Gen 5 Pokemon Trubbish and Vanillude. Who would want to raise a pile of garbage, the fandom asked. In an ice cream cone Pokemon? Are they running out of ideas? The truth of the matter is that inanimate object-based Pokemon have been around since the beginning, and there are certainly grosser or less imaginative designs out there. I mean, Geodude is literally a rock with arms, guys. But that didn't stop people from hating, and Trubbish and Vanillude to this day are some of the least liked Pokemon around. So I find it funny that these two are actually made for each other. They're in the same egg group. So if you throw your ice cream cone in the trash, be careful, you might just find an egg in there.
Number 6, Skitty and Wailord. You knew it was gonna make the list, but you weren't sure where. This is arguably the most infamous awkward breeding pair. Where do I even begin with this one? Skitty is a kitten Pokemon coming in at about 2 feet tall and weighing 24.3 pounds. Also, a quick note, 75% of Skitty tend to be female. Wailord, on the other hand, comes in at a whopping 47 feet 7 inches and weighs 877.4 pounds. Allow that to paint a picture in your head. The sheer weight/body structure difference would be enough to instantly crush Skitty. But Skitty is apparently one adventurous little Pokemon, as it is willing to take on the risk in order to populate the Pokemon world. This is a breeding pair that will probably stay forever in the back of our minds. Its infamy is the exact reason why it did not make it higher on the list, though.
Number 5. Zebstrika and Pyroar. Breeding different species of animal together isn't a thing that just happens in video games. In real life, people have crossed different species of animals together to create new species, like the Zedonk, a zebra-donkey hybrid, and the Liger, a lion-tiger mix. For a long time, these hybrid animals were thought to be sterile as a rule, because many chromosomes were passed down that often resulted in the hybrid animal being infertile. But in 2012, a liger mother actually managed to have a cub with a lion. Isn't nature amazing? So I found it amusing that two species associated with hybrid breeds in real life, the lion and the zebra, have Pokemon counterparts in the same egg group, Zebstrika and Pyroar. If you breed them together, is it a Zebroar or a Pystrika? Well, the reality is that the resulting Pokemon will just be whatever species the mother is. But it's fun to dream up hybrids, isn't it?
Number 4. Rhydon and Esper. When Esper was first seen, it became an instant meme Pokemon. Known as the Restraint Pokemon, it has adorable kitten-like features with insane psychic powers. Throw Rhydon into the mix with this adorable lifeless-eyed Pokemon and you get an extremely odd breeding pair. Rhydon is heavily armored with a sturdy, rocky body and is able to live in molten lava up to 3,600 degrees. Nothing is too hot for this Pokemon, hehehe. But beware! Esper is said to have enough psychic energy to blast everything within 300 feet of itself, and its entry even states that it has no control over its power. Yes, Rhydon can survive in lava, but can it survive an insatiable Esper's wrath? Only Arceus knows.
Number 3. Nidoking and Nidoqueen. This might be cheating technically, but I think probably the weirdest Pokemon that cannot be bred together to produce an egg is Nidoking and Nidoqueen. As the first gendered Pokemon ever, you'd think this would be a no-brainer, but as it turns out, when gender was introduced as a mechanic, this created some problems for the two Pokemon that already had assigned genders. For whatever reason, though Nidoran female can produce eggs, her evolutions, Nidorina and Nidoqueen, are in the undiscovered egg group, meaning that they cannot be bred with any Pokemon to produce an egg. As far as I know, Game Freak has never released any statement to address this issue, so fans speculate that the reason for this has to do with preventing some sort of glitch. After all, breeding Nidoking with a Nidoqueen could technically produce eggs for two different species of Pokemon, since Nidoking and Nidoqueen aren't the same species, and if it only produced eggs of one gender, it would make it hard to breed. So most people assumed that this caused problems for Game Freak when they were programming the breeding mechanic, and to make things simpler, they just made it so Nidoqueen couldn't produce eggs. If you breed a Nidoking with a Ditto, this will only produce male Nidoran offspring. But if you breed a female Nidoran with a Ditto, it has a 50% chance of producing Nidoran offspring of either gender. You'd think 15 years later there'd be a solution to this issue, and they'd allow Nidoqueen to produce eggs. But no, to this day, Nidorina and Nidoqueen are still barren.
Number 2. Tyrantrum and Avila. Things usually get a little hot when the idea of making love is involved. However, this is not the case for one of the weirdest breeding pairs to date, Tyrantrum and Avila. You're literally taking a dinosaur and hooking it up with something that could have been in the Ice Age. Although Avila is a walking glacier, I constantly refer to it as an ice table. Now take Mr. Tyrantrumsaurus Rex and pair him up with Miss I'm the best ice table from IKEA, and you've got yourself a match made in the distortion world.
And the number one weirdest breeding pair is Cuba and Kangaskhan. Probably one of the biggest continuity problems in the series was introduced as a result of breeding. In Generation 1, breeding wasn't a thing, so Pokemon like Cubone and Kangaskhan were designed without their origin being called into question. Cubone is described in countless Pokedex entries as always wearing the skull of its dead mother on its head, as a reference to the events in Lavender Town's Pokemon Tower, and Kangaskhan has always had a baby in its pouch, which doesn't even really appear to be the same species of Pokemon. Even back then, these Pokemon were confusing. So literally every Cubone's mom has to die for it to have a skull? Is it just part of their species that the moms always die in childbirth and the Cubones always have dead moms? And what about Kangaskhan? Now we know it's 100% female, but even back then we had to wonder, who fathered all the babies if every Kangaskhan was a mother? Why doesn't Kangaskhan have a pre-evolution if the baby isn't the same Pokemon? Some people even went so far as to develop theories that Kangaskhan was meant to be an evolution of Cubone at some point, because these two Pokemon made so little sense. Things got even more screwed up when breeding was introduced. So now we know for a fact that Cubone's mom isn't dead, because we have it in our party when it hatches from the egg. So whose skull is that? And now we can hatch adult Kangaskhan's from eggs that already have their own babies. You'd think they'd introduce a baby stage for Kangaskhan and fix the continuity, since they added useless ones to a ton of other Pokemon that you'd forget even existed, like Jinx. But no, the one Pokemon it makes sense to give it to doesn't get a baby. And it just so happens that both Cubone and Kangaskhan, the two Pokemon that screw up the continuity the most, are in the same egg group, creating the single egg that makes the least sense in the Pokemon universe ever.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to go check out the top NPCs in Pokemon video that Tamashii and I did over on her channel, which will be linked down in the description. Thank you all for checking out the video. Big thanks to Tamashii for doing this with me, and we will see you all next time. Love you guys. Bye!